Hello everyone and welcome back to Sector 6, and today what I've got for you is, we're going to discuss some of the main things that you can take away from Final Fantasy VII Remake Intermission. It's not going to be a full breakdown like the previous video, that's already up there, it's full of spoilers, it literally spoils everything in the main story. So if you still don't know what's going on in Final Fantasy VII Remake Intermission, and you want to see a spoiler video, that's what you want. I'll put the link in the description, I'll pop it up on screen now. But today what we're going to do is we're going to look at the implications of Final Fantasy VII Remake Intermission and what some of the story aspects mean going forwards for like Part 2 and Part 3. Don't forget to drop a like on the video and subscribe for future content, and remember, I'm going to say it again, this video is full of spoilers, so this is your last chance to get out. Spoilers everywhere. Okay, that's that. Let's get on with it. So what I've got is, I've got 7 things that I think that we can take from this DLC. I'm just going to go through them in order. I'm going to save the juicier ones till the end, so, you know, stick about. And the first one, I think, is a pretty simple one. It's regarding Fort Condor. So a lot of people thought that the Fort Condor minigame was going to be where we get the Phoenix materia from, and that Fort Condor itself as a location was going to have a diminished impact on the story. Now, after seeing playthroughs of Final Fantasy VII Remake Intermission, you don't get the Phoenix materia from the Fort Condor game, you get an AP up materia. Plus, on top of that, a lot of people that are to do with Avalanche seem to be kind of fleeing Midgar. Like, I would like to believe, seeing as we don't see them die on screen, I would like to believe that Neo, Polk, Billy Bob, and all of those kind of connected people, I feel like they probably got out of Midgar. And the nearest place for them to go, because you've got to remember, Calm is a puppet town. Calm was wiped out in the same way that Nibelheim was in the original continuity, so that isn't really a safe place for them to go to. And you'd expect that they know that something went on there and know that it isn't a safe place. So my prediction is that we're going to bump into these characters in Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2 at Fort Condor, and Fort Condor's still going to be a very important part of the game. It could well be that we still have to do the Fort Condor battle, but like we only do it once, and it is like a real life version, in universe of course, of the Fort Condor board game. That'd be quite an interesting little twist. Make everyone think that we're not going to do the Fort Condor battles, and that it's just this mini game. But then when you actually get to Fort Condor, probably at the point of the huge materia, I don't think it will happen in the first time we go there, but definitely when we go to get the huge materia and we get Phoenix, I think there's going to be one of those battles still. I just gut feeling. I'm putting it out there now. But yeah, that's the first thing I think that we can take from this, is that Fort Condor is still going to be an important location. Fort Condor is still going to be probably where we get Phoenix. So, and there is also going to be a huge materia there. And it's a massive point of resistance against the Shinra. So Fort Condor is going to be huge, I think. I could be wrong, but yeah, there we go. Now, the second thing I think that we can take from this DLC, Godo is in prison, which is a bit weird, because in the original game, he's not really in prison. Well, he's not in prison at all. He's just kind of, you know, running Wutai. So there's 2 possibilities for this. The first one is that he's not really in prison, and this is just like a narrative that he's kind of pushing even to his own people, because Yuffie seems to believe it, Sonon seems to believe it. It could be a false narrative and he's just kind of hiding away in the background. It could also be that he's behaved in the same way that he did in the original. So in the original game, Yuffie's really annoyed at Godo because he's kind of given up Wutai's sovereignty. He's kind of caved into Shinra and he's not fighting the good fight, you know, fight to the death kind of mentality. It's possible that that's happened again, but this time rather than it just being Yuffie and a bit of discontent in the society, he's actually been locked up by his own people for caving into Shinra. That's a possibility. But there's definitely more to this story. I think that is the thing that we can take from Intermission. There is a lot more coming as far as, you know, Wutai, Avalanche, and the war against Shinra. Potentially even a second war. Because, you know, the timeline has changed. Things are different. And that ripple effect is just going to keep on getting bigger. And the changes are going to keep on getting bigger with it. So, yeah, that's a possibility. And, yeah, that's the second thing. Now, the third thing that we can take from this is how dodgy a guy Chadley is. Like, Chadley is properly dodgy. Like, I had a bad vibe from him in the original game. Like, I felt like there was more to him. You get that explanation scene about him being created by Hojo and all that sort of business. And even before that, I thought, like, why is this little dude coming up to me, giving me little missions to do, running tests on me? This is a very Shinra MO, and it always has been. So, yeah, Chadley was already dodgy to me, but that scene that you see with him and Vice kind of drives it home. Chadley, in that scene, is as close to Hojo as I have ever seen him. Like, Scarlet gets close to Hojo. Chadley gets just as close. He's completely dismissive of the threat of Vice. It's like Vice is his pet. That's how it comes across. Like, Vice is just his little pet subject. Like, with Cloud, he treats him with a modicum of respect. Yuffie treats her with a modicum of respect. You know, he still treats them as if they're a test subject, but he doesn't talk down to him. He doesn't talk to him like they're a piece of shit on his boot, basically, which he does to Vice. He's completely dismissive of him, like, no, you're not killing anybody, boy. You're in a computer simulation. Pipe down. And that's how it feels. And this little theory's just been knocking around in my head. We get the reveal that Hojo created Chadley. But what if it's more than that? Like we see in Dirge of Cerberus, Hojo kind of uploading himself into Vice's body. What if something similar has been done here with Chadley, where Hojo has kind of created an AI based on his own personality and his own thought waves and all that sort of business, and then just kind of modified it slightly to make it less crazy Hojo, which could be a dangerous thing because I think one of the weaknesses of Hojo is how crazy he is. He doesn't know when to rein it back and just goes too far. If you get a Hojo with some reserve, that could be a problem. So yeah, Chadley's very dodgy, and I think that's something that we need to take forward into the next game. He's definitely going to pop up again. He's probably going to be something to do with materia. I hope he's to do with materia fusion, like I've suggested in a previous video. But yeah, Chadley, dodgy guy. Now the next thing, the fourth thing, if you're keeping count, that we can take from the intermission DLC, is that part 2 is going to start in Calm. Where in Calm it starts is a completely different question. There are two possibilities. The first one is that we kind of start on the road just outside of Calm, and all we have to do is walk in and carry on. The other possibility is, and this is the one that I don't know if it'd be better or not. It'd be good for me. I'd enjoy it, but I don't think a new player of Final Fantasy would really twig what's going on. I don't know. A new 7 player might struggle with it, but it would be interesting if we started the game in that truck, roll into Nibelheim with Cloud, Sephiroth, and 2 Shinra Grunts. Well, 3 Shinra Grunts, because there's one driving in the front, I think, as well. So, yeah, that scene, the first scene of the Calm flashback, I think it'd be amazing if we started with that. Don't think we will, because it'd be a bit jarring for new players. I mean, I don't know. We could. The whole Sephiroth thing at the end of Remake will have been jarring for new players. The whole Zack thing will be extremely jarring for new players. But they were both towards the end of a game. I don't think they'll open the game with something that jarring. I don't know. I'd like it. What about you? Do you think that we should start in the flashback? I think we should. But yeah, the thing to take, part 2 starts in Calm. We're not going to be starting on the edge of Midgar and running across and fighting custom sweepers to get the atomic scissors weapon for Barrett. None of that. We are going to be starting in Calm. It just all depends how. Now, the fifth thing to take from the Final Fantasy VII Intermission DLC is that Roche is 100% going to be back. 100%. Like, the fact that they've dropped him into this DLC, the fact that he is in Sector 7 looking for Cloud, he's going to be like a dog with a bone all the way through this remake story. He's going to be chasing Cloud. I kind of feel like Roche, and I've said this before in one of my other videos, like about a year ago, I really feel that Roche is going to end up filling that role that Yuffie was originally meant to fill in Final Fantasy VII. And that role is of an ex-Shinra mercenary, an ex-soldier who's chasing Cloud and Sephiroth, but he's also being chased by a Shinra. Now, I think they'll drop the ex-Shinra, I think they'll drop the being chased by a Shinra, and I think they'll drop the chasing Sephiroth because, to be fair, if he's chasing Cloud, he's chasing Sephiroth as a byproduct anyway, so, we don't need that motivation. I think it's perfect if we just keep him obsessed on Cloud. And that could be where the soldier degradation starts to kick in. that obsession with Cloud is the first sign of it. Well, no, it's not the first sign of it. Everyone thinks he's crazy anyway. That's probably the first sign of it. But this is how it's going to manifest itself in the story going forwards. We're going to see Roche lose it. Keep chasing Cloud, keep falling short, keep breaking down. I don't think we're going to see him sprout a wing or anything daft like that. That's not going to happen. But, yeah, that's my shout. We're going to see him fill that mercenary type role. Not so much as a mercenary, still as part of Shinra, I think, but just chasing Cloud down. Okay, so we're getting into the big two now, the final two. The sixth thing that I think that we can take from Intermission is that part 2 is looking more and more likely by the minute to have, if not a massive open world, at the very least big open areas. But everything that they're showing us, it's all big open areas. And it'd just be stupid not to let us explore those big open areas. Like, they pulled it off in 15. The areas aren't massive, obviously, but it was a start. They've been talking about inspiration that they've been taken from games like Horizon Zero Dawn and things like that. So, like, genuinely, I'm expecting that we. So while I do think it is still going to be slightly linear, I do think there's going to be a lot of scope for exploration in part 2. I think we're going to get bigger areas than we expected. Like, a lot of people are probably expecting Final Fantasy 10 or 12 size areas. I think it's going to be bigger than both of them. I genuinely think that we are possibly looking. I mean, it depends where part 2 ends. If part 2 ends in June, then the whole continent is going to be open. But if part 2 ends on the second continent, it might be a bit different. I don't know. But yeah, we're getting big areas no matter what. And that's the thing that I think that we need to take from this. It is looking like they're just expanding this. It's just going to open out. Just like it does in the original game. You get out of Midgar and boom. The world is at your fingertips. Literally. That's going to happen. That is going to happen. I feel that. And now we're going to get to the big one. So, we have that final scene with Zack at Aerith Church, and yeah, it confirms a few things. The first thing that it confirms one thing 100%, and that is that somewhere Zack is alive. A lot of people were trying to do, like I've said, mental gymnastics and headcanon, saying, oh, no, he takes a few more steps after that scene with Cloud and Aerith, and then he gets shot. And even I said in one of my videos it was a possibility. It's unlikely, but it is a possibility. But that's out of the window now. We see Zack in Midgar, outside Aerith Church. He is alive. But we have to look at this because there's a lot more to this scene than meets the eyes. And I've possibly looked too deep here. I don't know. We'll see. So the first thing is, just because we see Zack alive, it doesn't mean that he's alive in Remake's timeline. I still believe that Zack is in a separate timeline. And there's a couple of reasons for this. First one, obviously, the stamp on the crisp packet. That's still unexplained. It needs to be explained. And the most logical explanation for that is an alternate timeline. It just is. It just is. The second thing that we need to think about is, when is Zack? It sounds like a bit of a daft thing to say, but it is important. I've gone over it in my spoiler video that I previously did, so you may have heard this already. But what I'm thinking is, the first thing that everyone's going to think is when they look at that scene, they're going to think, oh, it's after Platefall. These are all the people from Sector 7, all the people who've been displaced and, lost their homes, they're all here. I don't think it is. I think it is equally possible, if not more possible and plausible, that this is just after the events of Before Crisis, just before the start of Final Fantasy VII Remake. That's what it looks like to me. And if you don't know the events of Before Crisis, shit goes down, a big thing called Zirconiade gets summoned, and a chunk of Sector 6 gets absolutely nuked. So that would displace people, leave people in a mess, in a state of disarray, needing somewhere to hunker down. Sector 6 is right next to Sector 5. Do you know what I mean? There's a lot of things that lend weight to that premise, that it is pre-Final Fantasy VII Remake, rather than 2/3 of the way through or after Final Fantasy VII Remake. And there is another thing that potentially potentially confirms this. And this could just be an oversight. It could be something like everyone did made a big deal about how Midgar looked different in that ending with Zack in Remake. Everyone made a big deal about that, and I was always of the opinion, I think it's just a bit of dodgy rendering that. Like obviously this scene's been done by a different team or something like that. Like the render or one of the settings was off and they just ran with it. They didn't notice it. I don't know. But that's how it felt to me. It just felt like it was a rendering thing because you got to understand you've got all of those lights going off with the whispers exploding and the singularity around Midgar. That's going to create a lot of light in the render and it's going to change the way things look. So yeah, that's a possibility. I'm not purporting to be some sort of rendering god or anything like that. I'm not saying that I'm right on this. I'm saying that's what I thought. That was my initial take when I saw that. But when you look at the cutscene at the end of Final Fantasy VII Remake Intermission with Zack, what you'll see is you'll see the cross at the back of the church. If you ignore all the people that are kind of strewn about, ignore the seating, because all that kind of fits in, and pews and altars can be moved. That's neither here nor there. Aerith could come in straight after this, move everything around, and bam, we're right where we need to be. So, yeah, that's neither here nor there. The thing that intrigues me the most is that cross on the wall at the back. Because if you look at it in the scene with Zack, it's got the same red wood effect that everything else has got. The floor, the pew, the altars, all of that. Same deal, same colour, same wood. When you look at that same cross in game, so I think the best way to do this is either the fight that you have with Reno when you first drop into the church, you can kind of catch it then, or later on in the game you can just go back there. When you meet the Angel of the Slums, for example, you can get a good look at it then. But that cross on that back wall is a completely different colour. Same design, but completely different colour. Almost looks like it's fatigued. It looks like the colour's been stripped off it. I don't know why that'd be the case, but that's what it looks like to me. But undeniably, it is a different colour. Now, like I say, it could easily be an oversight on the part of the developers. I don't know if it is, because that same fatigued coloration is the same coloration in Advent Children. So... And actually, let me just check one thing really quickly. Oh shit, why did I look at that? Right, so when you look at the same screen in the original game, it has the same colour as it does in the Zack scene. But then when you look at the church later on in Final Fantasy VII Remake, after Platefall, you know, when you do the Kyrie side quest, it's white, just like it is in the Reno fight, and just like it is in Advent Children. So I don't know if this is a case of just pure absent-minded inconsistency, or if there's something to this. It could, like I say, 100% just be pure absent-minded nonsense. Like they've just forgot to colour it properly. I don't know. The texture's wrong. They've loaded the wrong texture. I don't know. But it could also be that they're trying to show that Zack is alive in the original timeline of Final Fantasy VII, not the remake timeline. So Zack has survived and changed that timeline completely. That's an interesting thought. Like, this was something that I was driving at in an earlier video, like one of my first Zack videos that I did, where I said that there is an outside possibility that he's not survived in a third timeline, he's not survived in the remake timeline, but he's actually survived in the original timeline. And it is a solid possibility. It is a solid possibility. Now, another thing that I did see, when Zack's arrived at the church, everyone's there because of the mourning Aerith. And again, don't think that's the case. I just don't think that's the case. How did she die? Like, genuinely, there's nothing to indicate that Aerith has died. There's nothing to indicate that she's going to die. Not at this point, at least. You know, there's nothing. These people aren't in mourning. They're in disarray. They're in absolute chaos and disarray. And the only two events in the Final Fantasy VII continuity at this point that it could be is either the Before Crisis events, like I say, with Zirconiade, or Platefall. And I don't think it's Platefall. It's too... Because I think, like I say, when Zack is, I think it's too early for Platefall by a good few days. It seems like it is the aftermath of Sector 6, potentially. I don't know, though. There's a lot to be revealed about this scene. They could go anyway with it. So this is purely all speculation. But that's my thoughts on what we can take from Final Fantasy VII Remake Intermission, what kind of information we can glean, and what kind of things it tells us going forwards for Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2. I'd love to see what you think about this video. Don't forget to drop that in the comments for me. Tell me what you think. Tell me what you think's going on with the Final Fantasy VII Remake story going forwards. Are you happy with it? Are you unhappy? Do you have concerns? Like, literally, get it all out there. Come on, let's talk. But don't forget to drop a like on the video, subscribe for future content, but more importantly than anything, have a great day.